The challenge. The message arrived on every screen on Earth simultaneously. The holographic projection showed a towering figure with crystalline features and multiple sets of eyes, an archon of the Galactic Concordat. Its voice resonated in every human language at once. People of Earth, your civilization has been deemed worthy of participation in the Great Games. This is both an honor and an obligation. Each sentient species must prove its right to exist through combat in our sacred arena. You have 30 days to select your champion. Failure to comply will result in immediate planetary quarantine. The United Earth Council convened within hours. Representatives from every nation gathered in Geneva, faces drawn with concern. Admiral James Rodriguez, Earth Defense Force Commander, delivered the briefing they all dreaded. The Concordat runs these games every millennium. Species that fail to participate or lose their matches face isolation or worse. We've confirmed this through multiple alien sources. This isn't a choice, it's survival. In the weeks that followed, Earth's military powers scrambled to assess their options. The few recordings they had of previous arena matches showed battles that defied physics. Champions wielding technologies and abilities that seemed like magic. Traditional combat training would mean nothing. What the military leaders couldn't know was that humanity's greatest advantage wasn't in their weapons or training methods. It was in something the Concordat had never encountered before: human adaptability and defiance. The arena itself was a massive structure orbiting a distant star, a sphere large enough to contain entire ecosystems. Its ancient halls had seen millions of battles over countless millennia. Now, for the first time, a human would walk those halls. As Earth's governments debated their approach, underground fighting rings worldwide began holding unofficial tournaments. Warriors, athletes, and soldiers competed desperately for the chance to represent humanity. But the eventual champion would come from an unexpected source. In the dusty archives of the Lunar Research Station, Dr. Elena Santos made a discovery that would change everything. Ancient cave paintings from multiple continents showed identical symbols to those used by the Concordat. Humanity had been watched, tested, and prepared for this moment for thousands of years. The question wasn't just who would fight, but whether humans could uncover the truth behind these games before it was too late. As the 30-day deadline approached, Earth's future hung by a thread. The Archon's final words had contained a hidden warning that few had noticed. Prove your right to exist. Not just to fight, not just to compete, but to exist. The implications were staggering. In the sprawling megacity of Neo-Shanghai, a former military strategist named Sarah Chen watched the recordings obsessively. She noticed patterns others had missed, subtle weaknesses in seemingly invincible alien champions. Her analytical mind began forming a plan that would either save humanity or doom it entirely. The games weren't just about physical combat. They were a test of intelligence, adaptability, and most importantly, the will to survive against impossible odds. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what that truly meant. The selection. Sarah Chen stood before the United Earth Council, her scarred hands clasped behind her back. The selection arena behind her still smoldered from her final match. She had defeated 7 opponents in less than 10 minutes, a feat that should have been impossible. Your combat record is impressive, Ms. Chen, Council President Adebayo said, but this isn't just about fighting skill. The fate of our species rests on this decision. Sarah's response was measured, calculated. With respect, Madam President, if you're looking for just a fighter, you've already lost. The Concordat expects us to send a warrior. Instead, send them a strategist who knows how to fight. The holoprojector activated, showing footage from Sarah's military days. Operation Ghost Thunder, where she had led a small team against an overwhelming force of separatist troops. Instead of direct combat, she had used the environment, psychology, and unconventional tactics. The enemy had surrendered without a single casualty on either side. You were discharged for insubordination, General Matthews growled. You refused direct orders. I refused to sacrifice my team when there was a better way. Sarah countered. The arena isn't about following orders. It's about survival and adaptation. That's what humans do better than anyone else. Dr. Santos stepped forward, her research files floating in augmented reality around her. The cave paintings I discovered show more than just concordat symbols. They show evolution, how each civilization changed after their arena trials. This isn't just a test of combat prowess. It's something far more complex. Sarah approached the central hologram, manipulating the alien combat footage. Look at their champions. Perfect form, incredible power, but they're predictable. They fight the way they were taught, the way their species has always fought. But humans, we take what works and discard what doesn't. We improvise, adapt, overcome. The council chambers fell silent as Sarah demonstrated her analysis. Each alien champion had patterns, weaknesses hidden beneath their spectacular abilities. Where others saw invincible warriors, she saw opportunities. The Archon's message wasn't just an announcement. Sarah continued. It was our first test. They're watching how we select our champion. Do we choose raw strength, technical skill, or do we understand that survival requires more than just winning fights? President Adebayo leaned forward. And what makes you so sure you can survive against beings that can tear apart reality itself? Sarah's eyes hardened. Because I've spent my entire life studying one thing: how to win when victory seems impossible. The arena champions are powerful, yes, but they've never faced someone who refuses to play by their rules. The selection process had brought forth incredible warriors, Olympic athletes, special forces operators, martial arts grandmasters. But as the council watched Sarah dissect combat footage, identifying patterns and weaknesses that their best military analysts had missed, they realized something crucial. The Concordat wasn't just testing humanity's strength. They were testing their intelligence, creativity, and ability to innovate. In the observation deck above, Dr. Santos studied Sarah's neural scans. Her brain activity, while analyzing combat footage, was unlike anything the scientist had seen. Sarah wasn't just watching the fights. She was processing them on multiple levels simultaneously, finding connections and patterns that AI systems had missed. We've been approaching this wrong, Sarah told the council. The arena isn't just a battlefield. It's a laboratory. Each match reveals something about how different species think, fight, and evolve. The Concordat isn't looking for the strongest warrior. They're looking for the species that can teach them something new. The council's deliberation was shorter than anyone expected. When the votes were tallied, the decision was unanimous. Sarah Chen would represent humanity in the arena. As she left the council chambers, Dr. Santos caught up with her. There's something else in the cave paintings, she whispered. Something I haven't told the council yet. The civilizations that performed best in the arena. They're all extinct now. Sarah nodded grimly. Then we'll have to do more than just survive. We'll have to change the game entirely. First blood. The arena's preparation chamber hummed with ancient energy. Sarah Chen stood motionless as robotic attendants fitted her with the standard combat suit, a gleaming second skin that would supposedly adapt to her fighting style. Her first opponent would be a Crix warrior, a being evolved from crystalline life forms. Champion Chen, the chamber master's voice echoed, its translator making the alien words comprehensible. Your opponent has won 37 consecutive matches. The odds markets heavily favor your defeat. Do you wish to forfeit honorably? Sarah continued her breathing exercises, mind racing through the combat footage she'd studied. Just one question. The arena's environmental controls are fully customizable, correct? Within safety parameters, yes, though most champions prefer standard conditions. A slight smile crossed Sarah's face. Let's change that tradition. The transport field activated, and Sarah felt herself dissolving into pure energy. She reformed in the arena proper, a vast circular space surrounded by floating platforms filled with alien spectators. Her opponent materialized opposite her, 3 meters of living crystal, faceted limbs ending in razor-sharp points. The Krix warrior's crystalline body refracted light in dazzling patterns. "Human," it resonated. "I will make your death quick, out of respect for your species' youth." Sarah's response was to activate her suit's environmental interface. As the battle signal sounded, she didn't charge forward. Instead, she sent a specific command through her neural link. Maximum humidity, followed by a rapid temperature drop. The Krix warrior launched forward, its crystalline blades whistling through the air. But Sarah was already moving, not to attack, but in a calculated retreat. The moisture in the air began to condense, forming a fine mist. "You cannot escape forever, human," the Krix taunted, its movements becoming slightly slower as the temperature continued to drop. "Who's escaping?" Sarah replied, leading her opponent in a spiral pattern. "I'm just waiting for basic physics to take effect." The alien spectators watched in confusion as Sarah continued to avoid direct combat. The Krix warrior's attacks became increasingly frustrated, its crystalline form accumulating a layer of frost. What none of them understood was that Sarah wasn't fighting a warrior. She was fighting a living crystal. And crystals have structural weaknesses. The temperature dropped below freezing. Moisture had seeped into microscopic fissures in the Krix's body. As the water froze and expanded, those fissures began to grow. The Krix warrior finally realized the trap, but too late. What are you doing?" "Thermal shock," Sarah explained, activating her suit's heating elements. The sudden temperature change was too much for the stressed crystal structure. With a sound like breaking glass, cracks spread across the Krix's body. Sarah finally attacked, not with brute force, but with precisely targeted strikes at the weakening fault lines. The mighty crystal warrior shattered into thousands of pieces. The arena fell silent, then erupted in chaos. "Winner, Champion Chen of Earth," the announcer's voice boomed. First human victory recorded in arena history. As medical drones reassembled her opponent, the Krix weren't easily killed. Sarah noticed something in the highest observation box. The Archon was studying her with an intensity that seemed more than mere curiosity. In the human observation pod, Dr. Santos frantically recorded data. She didn't just win, she reported to Earth Command. She demonstrated problem-solving that the arena's never seen before. No direct combat, no special powers, just an understanding of basic physics and her opponent's natural weaknesses. But Sarah wasn't celebrating. As she left the arena floor, she reviewed the match in her mind. The Krix warrior had been formidable, yes, but something felt off. Its attacks had been too predictable, its strategy too simple, almost as if it were following a script, she murmured. The realization hit her. This hadn't been a real fight. It had been a test, not of her combat skills, but of her ability to think differently. The arena games were more than just combat. They were an evaluation of each species' potential. And humanity had just demonstrated something unique, the ability to win without fighting at all. In her private chamber, Sarah began preparing for her next match. But her mind wasn't on combat techniques or battle strategies. She was starting to see a pattern in the arena's structure, in the way matches were arranged and opponents selected. The games weren't random. They were carefully orchestrated. The question was, orchestrated for what purpose? The Alliance. Sarah found him in the arena's lower levels, in a dimly lit maintenance corridor where ancient machinery hummed beneath translucent panels. Kival, former champion of the Nexari Empire, now reduced to maintaining the very arena where he once fought. His iridescent scales had lost their luster, but his eyes still held the intelligence that had made him legendary. "I wondered when you'd find me," Kival said without turning, his six-fingered hands deep in the arena's neural interface circuits. "The human who refuses to fight like a warrior. And I wondered why a champion with your record would choose to work in maintenance," Sarah replied, leaning against the corridor wall. "Especially after winning 93 consecutive matches." Kival's movements paused briefly. "You've done your research." "I research everything." including the fact that you disappeared right after discovering something in these systems, something that made the Archons very nervous. The alien warrior finally turned to face her. His expression was unreadable, but Sarah noticed how his secondary breathing vents had widened, a sign of stress in his species. "Your victory against the Crix," Kevall said. "It wasn't just about physics, was it? You saw the patterns." "The same patterns I found in the arena's core systems." Sarah nodded. "The fights are choreographed. Not completely, but enough to test specific responses. The question is, what are they testing for?" Kevall gestured for her to follow. They descended deeper into the arena's infrastructure, passing through security fields that should have stopped them but didn't. The maintenance access codes gave them nearly unlimited access. "Look at this," Kevall said, activating a hidden terminal. Data streams filled the air around them, combat records spanning millennia. Each species that enters the arena follows a predictable progression. They start with physical combat, then develop energy weapons, then psychic abilities. But humans, you're different. Sarah studied the data, her augmented reality implant translating the alien symbols. "We're not progressing according to their models. You're regressing, by their standards, using simpler solutions, adapting existing techniques instead of developing new ones." It terrifies them. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The arena isn't about finding the strongest warriors. It's about directing evolutionary paths. They're shepherding species towards some predetermined goal. Kevall's scales rippled in agreement. "And those that can't be shepherded are eliminated," Sarah finished. Dr. Santos was right about the extinct civilizations. They weren't eliminated because they lost. They were eliminated because they were too unpredictable. A distant alarm sounded, and Kevall quickly shut down the terminal. "Your next match is in 6 hours. Against a myriad champion, a being that can split into multiple copies of itself." "I'll need help," Sarah said. "Not during the match, but to understand what we're really fighting against." Kevall studied her for a long moment. The Nexeri were once like humans. Adaptable, unpredictable. The arena changed us, generation by generation, until we became what the Archons wanted. I won't let that happen to another species. Their alliance was sealed not with handshakes or formal agreements, but with the exchange of data. Kevall provided access to the arena's deeper systems, and Sarah shared her analysis of the patterns she'd discovered. As they worked, Sarah realized something else. The Archons don't just watch the matches, do they? They feed off them somehow. "Energy," Kevall confirmed. "Every battle generates specific patterns of energy that they harvest. But it's more than that. They feed on potential, the possible futures of each species. By directing evolution through the arena, they're farming that potential." Sarah's next match would be more than just a fight for survival. It would be a chance to disrupt the Archons' carefully maintained system. But first, she needed to understand exactly how the arena itself worked. In her quarters, Sarah and Kevall pored over maintenance logs and system architectures. The arena wasn't just a battlefield. It was a massive computation device, calculating and influencing the evolutionary trajectories of countless species. "Tomorrow," Sarah said, "we show them a future they haven't predicted." Kevall's scales shimmered with nervous energy. "If we're wrong about this, then humanity joins the list of extinct species," Sarah finished. "But if we're right, we might free every species in the galaxy from an evolution they never chose." The arena's lights dimmed for the night cycle, but in the depths of its ancient machinery, two beings from different worlds continued their work, preparing to challenge a system that had stood for millions of years. The true game was just beginning. The conspiracy. The match against the Myriad champion was scheduled to begin in 1 hour, but Sarah wasn't in the preparation chamber. Instead, she and Kevall were deep in the arena's computational core, racing against time to confirm their terrible suspicion. "There," Kevall said, his clawed fingers dancing across the ancient interface. "The energy signatures from every match for the past 1,000,000 years. Look at the pattern. Sarah's augmented reality display transformed the data into a three-dimensional model. The arena's energy harvest wasn't random. It formed a distinct spiral growing larger with each passing millennium. They're not just farming potential, Sarah whispered. They're building something. Every match, every species evolution, it's all feeding into some larger construction. Kival's scales darkened with dread. The Archons aren't directing evolution. They're using it as fuel. The truth was worse than either had imagined. The arena wasn't merely a testing ground. It was a massive engine, converting the potential futures of countless species into raw energy. Each battle narrowed the possibilities, channeling evolution along predetermined paths and harvesting the discarded futures as power. That's why they fear human unpredictability, Sarah realized. We create too many possible futures, too many branches. We're disrupting their harvest. A security alert flashed through the systems. Sarah's absence from the preparation chamber had been noticed. They had minutes at most. The Myriad Champion, Kival said quickly, it's not just going to split into copies. According to these readings, it's been modified to absorb and redirect evolutionary potential. If you fight it conventionally, they'll harvest not just the energy from the match, but all of humanity's possible futures, Sarah finished. We'll be locked into their planned evolution path forever. The arena's security systems began to activate. Ancient machinery hummed to life around them as defensive protocols initiated. But Sarah had already seen enough. The data confirmed everything they had feared and more. The Archons aren't gardeners, she said, downloading the final pieces of evidence to her neural implant. They're parasites. They've been feeding on the evolutionary potential of every species they encounter, leaving them as mere shadows of what they could have been. Kival's maintenance override codes wouldn't hold much longer. What are you going to do? The match will proceed exactly as they expect. Sarah smiled grimly. At first, they barely made it back to the public levels before security drones arrived. Kival disappeared into the maintenance corridors while Sarah sprinted to the preparation chamber. As the robotic attendants rushed to prepare her, her mind was racing through possibilities. The Archons had built their entire system on predictability, on channeling species along narrow evolutionary paths. But humans had evolved through chaos, through constant adaptation to unpredictable challenges. It wasn't just their future that was unpredictable, it was their very nature. In the observation box, Dr. Santos received an encrypted data burst from Sarah's neural implant. Her eyes widened as she processed the information. "My God," she whispered, immediately beginning urgent transmissions to Earth Command. The arena announcer's voice boomed through the complex. "Champion Chen of Earth, report for combat. Failure to appear will result in immediate forfeit and planetary quarantine." Sarah stepped onto the transport pad, her combat suit activating. But she had made modifications of her own, with Kival's help. Buried beneath layers of standard protocols were new routines, designed not to win the match, but to disrupt the very foundations of the arena's energy harvest. The Myriad Champion awaited her, a shifting mass of chrome and energy that already seemed to be splitting into multiple forms. The Archons watched from their elevated platform, unaware that their carefully maintained system was about to face something it had never encountered before, a warrior who understood the rules of their game and chose to break them completely. As the battle signal sounded, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Archons had spent millions of years harvesting the potential futures of countless species, but they had never faced a species that could generate new futures faster than they could be harvested. The real question wasn't whether she could win the match. It was whether the arena itself could survive what she was about to unleash. The rebellion. The Myriad Champion split into 12 identical copies, surrounding Sarah in a perfect circle. Each replica shimmered with chrome brilliance, their forms blurring as they prepared to attack. In the observation boxes, aliens of 1,000 species leaned forward, expecting to witness another display of human ingenuity. They weren't prepared for what happened next. Sarah activated her modified combat suit, but not to fight. Instead, she began broadcasting the truth about the arena on every available frequency, in every language, backed by the data she and Keval had discovered. The Archon's secret was laid bare before their captive audience. The arena isn't about proving worth, her voice echoed through the complex. It's about harvesting potential. Every species here has been trapped, forced to evolve along paths that aren't their own. Look at your histories. Look at what you've lost. The myriad copies hesitated, their programming conflicting with the revelation. In the highest observation box, the Archons rose from their crystalline thrones, their multiple eyes blazing with ancient fury. Silence the human. Their collected voice thundered, but it was too late. Keval had done his work well. Every maintenance system in the arena activated simultaneously, displaying proof of the energy harvest, showing each species how their potential futures had been stolen, consumed by the parasitic Archons to fuel their own immortality. The myriad champions' copies flickered, then reformed as one. "Is this true?" it asked, its voice resonating with uncertainty. "Our evolution, our victories, were never your own," Sarah confirmed, "but they can be again." Throughout the arena, riots erupted in the observation boxes. Species that had been bitter rivals for millennia suddenly found common cause. The Archons' carefully maintained order began to crumble as their victims realized the truth about their supposed trials of worth. Security drones swarmed the arena floor, but they faced something unprecedented: unified resistance from champions of a dozen species. Warriors who had been bred for combat through countless generations turned their skills against their former masters. Sarah's neural implant connected with the arena's systems, implementing the virus she and Keval had designed. The energy harvest protocols began to reverse, releasing centuries of stored potential back to their original species. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Beings that had been locked into predictable patterns for generations suddenly found themselves awakening to new possibilities. The rigid hierarchies of the arena began to dissolve as species reclaimed their lost potential. "You fool," the lead Archon's voice boomed. "Without our guidance, without the arena's influence, these species will devolve into chaos." Sarah stood her ground as reality itself seemed to waver around them. "Chaos isn't our enemy," she declared. "It's our strength. Humanity never evolved according to a plan. We evolved through challenge, through change, through endless adaptation. That's what you never understood." The myriad champion, now fully independent of its programming, joined her side. Other champions followed, each bringing unique abilities that had been twisted to serve the arena's purpose. Together, they began to dismantle the very systems that had enslaved them. Keval's voice came through Sarah's private comm channel. "The core systems are destabilizing. The energy release is causing quantum fluctuations throughout the structure. We need to evacuate." But evacuation wasn't simple. The Archons had begun their own desperate countermeasures, sealing transport systems and activating ancient weapons built into the arena's superstructure. They would rather destroy everything than lose control. "They're going to overload the core," Keval warned. "The energy release could tear apart space-time itself." Sarah looked at the gathered champions, beings who had been enemies moments before, but now stood united. "Then we give them a choice," she said. "All of us together." The assembled warriors, representing the finest fighters of 1,000 worlds, formed a circle. Each contributed their unique abilities, their reclaimed potential, creating a feedback loop that even the Archons couldn't control. In the observation boxes, Dr. Santos watched in amazement as her instruments registered power readings that shouldn't have been possible. The barriers between species, carefully maintained by the Archons for millions of years, were dissolving. The arena itself began to transform, its ancient structure groaning as it was forced to accommodate possibilities it was never designed to handle. The Archons' perfectly ordered system faced something it couldn't predict or control: genuine cooperation between species that were meant to remain divided. Sarah's voice rang out one final time. "Your game is over. Now we make our own rules." The rebellion had begun. But as reality itself buckled under the strain of unleashed potential, one question remained: could the universe survive the freedom they were fighting for? Victory's price. The arena's superstructure groaned under impossible stresses as reality itself began to warp. Quantum fluctuations rippled through its ancient halls as millions of years of harvested potential sought release. The Archons had retreated to their inner sanctum, channeling power from emergency reserves in a desperate bid to maintain control. Sarah Chen stood at the center of the storm, surrounded by champions from 1,000 worlds. The myriad warriors' multiple forms created a shifting barrier of chrome and energy. HFY's maintenance protocols kept the arena's core from immediate collapse. Each species contributed what they did best, no longer bound by the Archon's restrictions. The power readings are beyond containment, Dr. Santos reported through the emergency channel. Whatever you're going to do, it needs to happen now. The Archon's voice resonated through the disintegrating structure. You cannot comprehend what you're destroying. We brought order to chaos. We guided evolution itself. You brought stagnation. Sarah countered. Real evolution needs freedom to fail, to adapt, to change course entirely. You didn't guide us. You caged us. The assembled champions began to move in perfect synchronization, each applying their unique abilities to stabilize their section of spacetime. The myriad champions split into hundreds of forms, each holding back the quantum tide. HFY's understanding of the arena's systems proved crucial as he rerouted power flows away from critical failures. But the Archons had one final weapon. The arena itself was their greatest creation, designed not just to contain battles, but to reshape reality according to their will. As their control slipped, they initiated its ultimate protocol: total reality reconstruction. If we cannot guide evolution, their collective voice boomed, then we will restart it. The very fabric of space began to fold in on itself. The Archons intended to collapse all possibility into a single point, to rebuild the universe according to their design. But they hadn't counted on humanity's greatest strength: the ability to inspire others to surpass their own limitations. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. Every species here evolved to face unique challenges. We survived because we adapted, changed, grew. The Archons tried to make us all the same, but our differences are our strength. The champions responded, not with blind obedience, but with understanding. Each contributed their unique perspective, their particular way of perceiving and manipulating reality. The myriad champion demonstrated infinite possibility. HFY brought deep system knowledge. Others added their own specialized skills and insights. Humanity's gift wasn't superior strength or technology. It was the ability to take these different approaches and unite them into something new, something unprecedented. As the arena began its final collapse, Sarah initiated the program she and HFY had prepared. It didn't try to stop the reality reconstruction. Instead, it opened the process to input from all species present. The Archon's perfectly ordered vision met billions of years of suppressed creative potential. The results defied description. Reality reshaping itself not according to a single plan, but incorporating elements from thousands of evolutionary paths. The arena, designed to restrict and channel, became a focal point for unrestricted creation. The Archon's physical forms began to dissolve as their power over reality slipped away. "What have you done?" they demanded. "We're not destroying evolution," Sarah explained as new possibilities bloomed around them. "We're setting it free." The cost was enormous. The arena, ancient monument to controlled evolution, couldn't survive the unleashing of so much potential. As reality stabilized into new patterns, the structure began to break apart. But its destruction wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. Dr. Santos' instruments recorded something unprecedented: spontaneous quantum entanglement between species. The barriers the Archons had maintained for millions of years weren't just physical. They had prevented true communication, true understanding between different forms of life. As the last champions evacuated the collapsing arena, Sarah looked back at the structure that had meant to cage humanity's potential. Instead, it had become the catalyst for something greater. Genuine cooperation between species that were meant to remain divided. The Archon's final message echoed through the quantum static. "You've doomed the universe to chaos." "No," Sarah replied. "We've given it a chance to truly evolve." 3 months later, representatives from former arena species gathered on Earth, not for combat, but for dialogue. The age of the arena was over. The age of collaboration had begun. Caval, now Earth's ambassador to the newly forming Galactic Coalition, stood with Sarah watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. "They're still afraid," he noted. "So many possibilities, so little control." Sarah smiled. "That's how evolution works. The future isn't meant to be harvested or controlled. It's meant to be explored." Above them, the stars seemed brighter somehow, as if reflecting the unleashed potential of countless species finally free to forge their own paths. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as conquerors or victims, but as liberators, proving that true strength lies not in domination, but in the courage to embrace uncertainty and change. The game had ended. The real adventure was just beginning.